Good morning. Welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James, the channel that brings you all your latest Rangers news. Guys, look, that's not a Rangers team. That's not a Rangers team. That's what was said by Barry Ferguson post-match on Saturday, and I think he was spot on with what he said. There is not a chance in hell that that team that was out there on Saturday was a Rangers team. Now, this morning I want to talk a little bit about some of the issues as regards the leadership at the club. I want to talk about Barry Ferguson's future as manager. I want to talk about youth players and their prospective role going forward for the rest of the season, and why I don't think they will get a fair chance to play because of the attitude of some of our supporters. I also want to kind of address as well, obviously the game on Thursday. There's a fair bit to get through. Now, let's start, of course, though, with the news that yesterday Celtic lost to the bottom of the league team. Now, look, we were humiliated. Yes, we were, losing to Hibs, who are now third and actually are, on the last 16 games, top of the SPL form table. They're the most informed team in Scotland right now. And if the league table was taken over the last 16, they'd be top. So, losing to Hibs, yes, Ibrox is not ideal and is not the standard we should accept, but it's not as big an embarrassment as losing away from home to the bottom of the league team. That is pretty humiliating. But look, I'm not going to take the mickey too much. I'm not going to sit here and take the piss out of them, because at the end of the day, they're 13 points clear of us, and to be honest with you, it makes absolutely zero difference that they lost yesterday. It's slightly humorous, but you know what? Let's face it, we're not exactly doing ourselves any favours, are we? But look, let's put something into perspective here. In 2025, Celtic have dropped 14 points in the league. 14. We've beaten them in 2 Old Firm games, yet we are still 13 points behind them. We have not closed the gap. Now, this is just absolutely wholly unacceptable to be in a position where this so-called invincible Celtic team, as they all keep telling us, are 14 points worse off. They've dropped 14 points. They've lost to us twice, and we're still 13 points behind them. Really does show how bad this team are, how bad the leadership is, how bad the management's been, how bad the players are, how bad the striker is, how bad the goalkeeper is, and just how genuinely dreadful Rangers have been this season. I mean, let's face it, any other season where Celtic would drop 14 points, if we had a semi-decent team, we would be top of the league now. They drop 14 points. There's a good chance that, that we obviously catch up with them and we pass them, especially after you've beaten them twice, obviously, in the league. So, look, I mean, it really does show how much these awful performances against the likes of Hibs, Motherwell, St Mirren, etc., have really hurt this team. And it does show, doesn't it, how bad this Rangers team is, that they can't take advantage of the fact that Celtic have dropped 14 points in 2025. Like I said, I've said this, and I mean, go back across my videos, and I've been called out for this, I've been slaughtered for this. This Celtic team is not a good Celtic team, right? They're not. This is not the Ange Postecoglou Celtic, the attacking machine that just kept going and going and going and never stopping. This is a very poor Celtic team. Before Celtic fans come at me and say, well, 13 points better. Yeah, I know you're above us because our team is even worse than your team. At the end of the day, look, they have never won a knockout game in Europe in recent times. They've lost 7-1 to the only decent team they actually came and played against. The only reason they progressed from the Champions League was because they beat up on the little boys, like the young boys, whatever they were called, Slovan Bratislava, the shit teams in the group. They lost all their meaningful games, Villa 4-2, for example. What else? Let's take this. Like I said, they've dropped 14 points in the league. They've lost 2 out of 3 times to us, a very bad Rangers team. I mean, that's got to be even more humiliating for Celtic fans. The fact that they've lost to probably one of the worst Rangers teams in my lifetime. I mean, I've been a supporter of this club since 1986, 1987, and I thought I'd seen some bad teams. I thought I'd seen some bad footballers. I thought I'd seen some dreadful players. But I'll tell you something, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen such a bunch of spineless, gutless, heartless players as these ones, who genuinely don't give a toss about the game or the team anymore. I've never hated a Rangers player in my entire life up until this season. I hate Dessers with a passion. I hate Tav with a passion. I didn't used to hate Tav with a passion, but he's really, really just stayed too long now. And in the words of Batman, he said, "You can die a hero, or you live long enough to become the villain." James Tavernier, you've lived long enough to become the villain. Tav is not the sole problem at this club, don't get me wrong, but he is a large part of the problem at this club. He's seen off numerous managers. He's stayed far too long. If you look at him this season, defensively, he has been very poor. He is not a captain. He doesn't lead the team. He doesn't inspire the team, with his words. He doesn't pull the team together when he needs to. Yesterday when we go 1-0 down, then 2-0 down, that's when your captain needs to get your team together and really kind of G them up and kick a few arses and put a few arms around people. And that's the way it works. But James Tavernier yesterday, one of his worst performances of the season. And, I had a Rangers fan tell me earlier that he's put his best performances in as a centre-back. Well, I don't know what games you're watching, guys, because his positional sense as a centre-back is genuinely dreadful. And that's because he's not a centre-back. Look, he's not a captain. And he is part of the problem. You can't have a captain on the field that is not a captain, that is not a leader of men. He is not a leader of men. He couldn't lead his way out of a wet paper bag. Never mind lead a set of players on the pitch. And, one of the things that, everyone's banged on about, look at his individual stats, look at his goals, look at his assists. This season, his goals have dropped off. His assists are not great either. They're okay, but they're not to the levels of his previous expectations. So he's not contributing as much on the attacking side as he has in previous seasons. He has, in effect, dropped off massively. Barry Ferguson, if he's got any balls, if he's got any sort of guts at all, needs to turn round. He won't do this, I guarantee it, because Tav is one of his favourites. And I'm going to tell you this now: Tav will start and will captain the team on Thursday against Bilbao, and will start and captain the team in all the games for the rest of the season because he's untouchable. Tav should be dropped. He shouldn't play again for Rangers this season. He shouldn't play for Rangers again, full stop. He should be stripped of the captaincy. Raskin should be the captain for the rest of the season. And then the new manager, whoever he is, and it won't be Barry Ferguson, ladies and gentlemen, needs to come in and make a decision on the captain going forward. So look, that's just kind of my little thoughts on things at this moment in time and where we are after, what could have actually been a good weekend for us had we won that game against Hibs. It really genuinely could have done. But, James Tavernier, like I said, big part of the issue. Not the only issue. There are a lot of issues at this football club. The board, which hopefully has been sorted. The lack of a real manager. The fact our goalkeeper is genuinely dreadful. And I do want to address the Jack Butland issue shortly too. The fact our striker needs 16 to 20 chances to score one goal, which is just not acceptable. The fact that our best striker's forced to play out on the wing to accommodate a Belgian Nigerian who couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo and spends more of his time rolling around on the ground and falling over, who's got a worse centre of gravity than a drunken toddler. So realistically, you look at it and you just think there's a lot of problems. And like I said, James Tavernier is part of those problems. He really is part of those problems. Jack Butland. Right, look, Jack Butland will start on Thursday. He will. Now, is that the right decision? Probably not. Is that the decision that we made? Yes. And all of you will be going, well, how? Why? Why is he starting? He's been dreadful. He's been a liability. Well, has anyone ever thought of what the reason could be that he continues to start no matter how badly he plays? Now, usually you start a player over and over again in a set position because there is no alternative to that player. As we saw with James Tavernier when obviously Devine wasn't liked and Dujon Sterling was injured and Casanwejo was injured, there was no one else to play right back. Therefore, Tav has to play right back because there is no other right back at the club. There is no alternative there. But, in terms of the goalkeeping position, Jack Butland, yes, has made some massive rickets. Absolutely huge. The Manchester United away punches it into his own net. That in the last game, shot goes straight through him. The chance that he spilled, the goal that was conceded Dundee, he's effectively thrown a fair few in his time. In this season, he was great last season. He's obviously not been this season, but I'll be honest with you, Liam Kelly is no better. Liam Kelly is Dracula from crosses. Go back to the Hibs game at Easter Road where he's to blame for at least one of those goals. When he comes for it, completely misses it and makes an absolute arse up of it. His distribution is from his feet is better than Butland's, but in terms of his all-round shot stopping and his actual, taking the ball from crosses and from set pieces, it's poor. Liam Kelly is not a good goalkeeper, and realistically, he's not a starting goalkeeper either. So you kind of have to weigh it up on the fact that, are you really strengthening the team by taking Butland out and putting Kelly in? Well, probably not, because Kelly's not very good. I mean, I'd rather start Mason Munn. I really genuinely would. I know he's a kid. I know he's hardly played any football, but genuinely, could he do any worse? Probably not. And he looks a very, very good goalkeeper. He looks a very, very good goalkeeper. Certainly does. And perhaps not on Thursday, but, certainly in the league going forward, I'd like to see Mason Munn given an opportunity. Maybe it was a mistake after all to sell Robbie McCrory. But let's address the Barry Ferguson question. Well, we'll get to Barry Ferguson in a minute. Let's look at the youth setup. Now, Bailey Rice obviously has played a few minutes here and there. Finley Curtis came on Saturday. Both Bailey and Finley, and these I'm not going to talk about putting Paul Ncio in now, or Archie Stevens in now, or Josh Gentles in now. I think they all should get an opportunity next season. But I'm going to talk about Bailey and Finley. Now, I had a so-called Rangers fan, Calvinino, I think he's called on X earlier, basically laughing and telling me that I was effectively throwing the game and didn't want to win the game if I played Bailey Rice and Finley Curtis on Thursday, that playing them is tantamount to throwing in the white towel to Bill Bowen, saying we want to lose the game. Now, I'd say this fan is genuinely clueless. Let me tell you why. Bailey Rice and Finley Curtis have got first team experience this season. They've played, yes, not a full amount of minutes, but they've played some minutes this season in the first team. Now, both of them came on at Old Trafford against Manchester United, and both of them more than held their own at Old Trafford against Manchester United. Now, before anyone comes back and say, yeah, but Owen, Man United are shit this season. Yeah, they're not great in the Premier League, but they've done all right in the Europa League. They've progressed in the Europa League. Bailey Rice up against Bruno Fernandes, Bailey Rice up against Christian Eriksen, both very good footballers. Finley Curtis against Mazraoui, against Dalot, decent footballers, So, look, Curtis and Rice, for me, like I said, they held their own in a game against an English Premier League team, and they did well against an English Premier League team. Bailey Rice, when he's come on, has never let the team down, has never looked out of place, has never looked panicked or rushed, has actually probably led to Nico Raskin playing even better by giving Raskin a bit more freedom to get forward, because Bailey Rice is, after all, a 6, which is kind of a position we've been crying out for. Finley Curtis is a winger. Again, he can play anywhere along the front three. But Finley Curtis can play wide left, he can play wide right. We haven't got a wide left. We've got Cheney to play wide right, no wide left. Why not put Finley Curtis there rather than putting Hamza Ingerman, who is not a striker, on the left wing, or Danilo, who is not a striker, on the left wing? Just a revolutionary thought here. Play a winger on the wing. I don't know. Perhaps that's just too much. Perhaps that's just, I don't know, pie in the sky thinking, and it's too much for people to get their heads around. Actually playing a winger on the wing. I don't know. Like I said, debate it. Tell me what you think. But both of them have played well when they've been given the chance to play. Both of them are good young players. Both of them, I think, could more than cope against Bilbao at Ibrox on Thursday. Both of them could cope in any of the remaining domestic fixtures. Now, like I said to you, why not put Finley Curtis on the wing? Because Oscar Cortez, clearly there's something wrong with him. He isn't fit, or he isn't liked, or he isn't fancy, or something, because he isn't getting a look in at the moment. So give Curtis a chance. Give him an opportunity to play. He hasn't let you down so far when he's come on. And for people to turn round and say, oh, you can't play Bailey Rice and Finley Curtis in these games, why not? Manchester City do it. Arsenal do it. Arsenal played Naranwi, or whatever he's called, Miles Lewis Skelly. They've all played Champions League games. Top-class players. They've thrown him in Premier League games against some of the best Premier League opposition. Phil Foden, right back at the start of his career, thrown into Champions League. Nico O'Reilly, Manchester City player, started in a FA Cup tie. Starters played in the Champions League. Rico Lewis, another one. Liverpool, Conor Bradley, Curtis Jones, both as kids were used in Europa Leagues and in Champions Leagues and in domestic cup competitions and put in there. There's, you look at it and you see examples at EPL clubs of them putting kids in, like Rice, like Curtis, into European ties, even Champions League ties, and the players not letting them down. Why? Well, because they're good footballers, 1, and 2, they've probably got more heart, more spine, more guts than any of the players you see, these experienced mercenaries that we've got in the team at the moment who genuinely don't give a fuck about this team. Pay Bailey Rice. next to Nico Raskin and Connor Barron on Thursday. Well, because Diamande's injured. So who do you bring in his place? Who do you put in there instead? Tom Lawrence, not fit. Who else do you put in there? What else do you want to go with there? Yanis Hadji? Yeah, I suppose Hadji's an option. But, look, at the end of the day, for me, why not play them? And it's not throwing in the towel. And that Rangers fan, or so-called Rangers fans, that it's throwing in the towel, it's not wanting to win if you play them, is just talking absolute shite. And this is part of the issue, I think, why young players don't get a fair crack at the whip in Scotland or at Rangers, because of fans like those who are a vocal minority within the fan base who will slag them off and slaughter them and say these things against them because they have a complete lack of understanding of football. And like I said, I love our fans to bits, but some of them make me despair. They really genuinely make me absolutely want to pull my hair out, and I haven't got a lot of it. I'd give Curtis and Rice a run out on Thursday. I'd also play them for the rest of the season. I don't think they'd do any worse. I genuinely don't think that playing a winger on the wing would be any worse than playing a striker out wide. And I genuinely don't think that playing Bailey Rice in the 6 role, giving Raskin license to get forward, would be any worse than what we're doing at this moment in time. In fact, I think it probably would be an actual step up on what we're doing at this moment in time. And you can guarantee one thing, both those lads will fight to keep those jerseys. They won't want to lose them. I'll tell you that now. That's just my thoughts, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Right, look, Barry Ferguson. I don't know what, I mean, as you know, I love Barry. I love him to bits. He's a Rangers legend, an actual real Rangers legend, not what James Tavernier is, not a legend, by the way. Barry Ferguson is a real Rangers legend. But I think, he's at risk of tarnishing that status with his spell in charge. Now, I think, to be honest with you, with these absolutely awful players who genuinely have no guts or fight or spirit in them, he's doing an okay job. He's doing the best he can do with a very bad bunch. That's not his fault that these players are absolute shite bags that don't give him monkeys and will throw any manager under the bus as long as they get to collect their wages at the end of the day. But long term, he is not the man for the job. Long term, and I don't want to hear, give him a season. Well, what happens then? They win another treble, which I think what would happen. He hasn't got the experience. He hasn't got the wherewithal, I don't think, to take this club forward. We need someone who comes in, who is an experienced manager, whether that's a Rangers man, ex-Rangers man, or whether that's a Dutch manager or a German manager or an English manager. It doesn't matter. As long as they are experienced enough to be able to address the issues at this club on the playing side of the ball. You look at this club at this moment in time, and there is major issues on the field. The team don't have the ability to get themselves up for or to beat those win those bread and butter games in Scotland. They can get themselves up for Celtic games, for European games, but the moment we come to play Hibs or St Mirren or Dundee or Dundee United or Motherwell, it just all goes to pot and they just don't know how to do it. So we need someone with some experience that can get teams organised, sorted, coached to a high level, have a plan A, have a plan B, have a number of different ways to beat a team. And that's what we need. We need someone with experience as well who can come in and sort out some of these players. Now, look, realistically, yes, most of this squad needs to be sold. Realistically, is that going to happen? No, of course it isn't going to happen. Why? Because we can't afford to. Because at the end of the day, you ship out this summer. Let's say we do ridiculously. Let's say we ship out 10, 15 players, right? There is not a chance in hell we can buy 10 to 15 players to replace them. It's not going to happen in one summer. Leaves you short. So you're going to have to retain some of them, okay? So what we need is an experienced coach who can get in their heads, can sort them out, can get them playing football again, and can get some belief back into them and some sort of sense of, professional pride in wanting to play the game and wanting to do well in the game. Whether you're playing for Rangers or Man City or Manchester United or Chelsea or Barcelona or Lyon or Braga, whoever you're playing for, you need to instill in your players a sense of pride, a sense of wanting to give that extra bit to run through walls for that team, no matter who the team is. And that comes down to the manager being able to motivate them, organise them and get them doing that. And that's what we need, is someone who is experienced, who can get that out of some of these players who are massively underperforming, who, like I said, will not be sold because we cannot overhaul a whole squad in one summer. It just isn't practical. And I genuinely don't believe that Barry, Neil, Billy Dodds, Alan McGregor have got the experience to do that. Look, if they get the job, I'll back them. Of course I will. I'll back them 1,000,000%, because at the end of the day, you know, this is my club. This is the club I love, and I want them to go on and do well. I want us to win leagues. I want us to win cups. I want us to dominate domestically again. I want us to do well in Europe. I want us to get into the Champions League. You know, and I'll obviously back them, but I just don't think he is the man for the job. He doesn't have, for me, the ability to manage at this level. You look at the games that we've lost this season, or the games we've been appalling in this season that he's managed, and it's come down to a lack of a lack of tactical awareness, a lack of, you know, a lack of being able to get the players playing, a lack of coaching, whatever it's been. It's, you know, there's something stopping them, and Barry can't obviously get round that. We need someone who can come in and get round that, and it doesn't need to be a bloody Rangers man, for God's sake. You know, if you look at the top clubs in England, right? You know, at no point do Liverpool fans say it's got to be a Liverpool man, or Man United fans say, oh, it's got to be a Man United man, or Arsenal fans say it's got to be an Arsenal man, or you know, Chelsea fans. Okay, Chelsea's a bad example because they have more managers than I have hot dinners. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean, guys. We need to start behaving like a big grown-up football club, and not like some parochial backwater team that, you know, has to have one of our own in charge, or else it doesn't count. You know, it just doesn't work, guys. It just doesn't work. At the end of the day, you know, that's not how modern football clubs and how modern football works. And I'll tell you something, you know, at the end of the day, I'll tell you this now. You bring in players, and we're bringing, obviously, we've got Lyle Cameron joining, you know, we've got Bam, we've got some Scottish players within the team. But, you know, looking at where we're shopping now, looking at where we're buying players from, you know, Scandinavia, South America, Africa, right? Do you think they honestly give a fuck whether the manager comes from Holland or has ever played for Rangers? Of course they didn't give a monkeys. They want a good manager who's going to look after them, who's going to develop them, who's going to get them to play well, who's going to get them to win them trophies. They couldn't give a shit if they played for Rangers, Man United, FC Rabat, Volgograd, Shakhtar Donetsk, Paris Saint-Germain, Genk, Bruges, Feyenoord, Seattle Sounders, Club America, whoever. They just want a manager who's going to come in, organise them, coach them, develop them, move them on. That's what they need, and that's what we need at this football club. It doesn't have to be a Rangers man. Can we get away from that ridiculous assertion? It doesn't have to be. It doesn't guarantee success. Guys, let's obviously get your comments in down there. Let's also as well, you know, let's I don't know. Do you know what? I genuinely don't know for Thursday, guys. I genuinely don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. They'll probably play brilliantly and beat Bilbao, because that's who they are, and then they'll go and lose the next domestic game because that's who they are. It's just Jekyll and Hyde beyond belief. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, on the way out, please like, comment and share. Obviously as well, please subscribe to the channel to help the channel keep on growing, and remember always, we are the people.